The desert at night is a place of profound, heavy silence. In the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona, the air in early February carries a sharp, dry chill that settles over the cacti and the sprawling Mediterranean-style estates. On the night of February 1st, 2026, that silence was absolute, until it wasn't. Imagine a high-definition security interface on a smartphone. It is a screen we all know. Usually it shows a delivery driver or a neighbor's cat. But at precisely 1:47 a.m., the digital eye of a Google Nest doorbell at the home of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie went dark. There was no error message, no low battery warning, just a sudden clean severing of the feed. Someone knew exactly where the camera was. Someone knew exactly how to blind it. But the perfect crime in the 21st century is a myth. Even when you kill the eyes of a house, the nervous system remains active. At 2:12 a.m., a passive infrared sensor, a device that doesn't record video but tracks heat and movement, tripped in the back-end logs of the home security system. It registered a mass moving across the front porch, a human-sized heat signature. For 24 seconds, this ghost moved in the darkness, bypassed a heavy deadbolt without a sound, and entered the residence. By the time the sun rose over the Santa Catalina Mountains that Sunday morning, the house was a tomb of unanswered questions. Nancy Guthrie, a woman whose life was defined by the clockwork precision of her faith and her family, was gone. Her bed was made. Her heart medication sat untouched on the nightstand. And the only thing left behind was a smear of dark fluid on the saltillo tile of the porch and a digital trail that ended in a void. This isn't just a missing person case. This is a collision between a high-profile American family and a calculated, tech-savvy predator. When the victim is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, a face that has been in every American living room for over a decade, the stakes don't just rise, they explode. The Federal Bureau of Investigation didn't wait the standard 24 hours. They were on the ground before the first news cycle even hit the East Coast. Before we go any deeper into the forensic evidence that the kidnappers missed, I want to check in with you all. This is a story that is still unfolding in real time. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. We are seeing people tune in from all over the world to follow this search, and every eyes on the ground count matters. If you are new to Crime Cortex, you are joining a community dedicated to the pursuit of truth and the granular details of justice. We don't just look at the headlines, we look at the evidence. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. In a case like Nancy Guthrie's, information moves fast, and you need to stay ahead of the curve. The investigation into the Guthrie abduction began not with a phone call, but with a silence. Nancy was supposed to be at her local parish by 8:30 a.m. When her pew remained empty, her friends knew something was wrong. By 9:15 a.m., her daughter Annie arrived at the house. She found the front door unlocked, a rare lapse for a woman as security-conscious as Nancy. When the local police arrived, they expected a medical emergency, perhaps a fall or a stroke. Instead, they found a scene that looked scrubbed. There was no signs of a struggle inside, no overturned furniture, no shattered glass. It was as if Nancy had simply evaporated. However, when the Pima County forensics team stepped onto the porch with high-intensity ultraviolet lights, the story changed. Under the purple glow, the porch lit up. Someone had tried to wipe away a significant amount of blood. Despite the cleanup attempt, the porous stone had trapped enough biological material for an immediate rush DNA profile. The result came back in record time. It was Nancy's. The fear shifted from a medical event to a violent extraction. This was a forced entry, a physical struggle, and a kidnapping of a woman who requires a pacemaker to keep her heart beating. The clock wasn't just ticking for the police, it was ticking for Nancy's very survival. As the news broke, the Today Show studios in New York went into a state of shock. Savannah Guthrie, who was preparing for the 2026 Winter Olympics coverage, was pulled from the air. The story became a national obsession within hours. Why Nancy? Why now? And how did someone manage to snatch a grandmother from a gated community without a single neighbor hearing a scream? The answer lay in that 2:12 a.m. motion sensor log. The FBI began a digital dragnet, pulling every scrap of data from every smart device within a 3-mile radius. They weren't just looking for a person, they were looking for a shadow. And eventually, on a neighbor's perimeter fence camera, they found him. He was dressed in tactical black. He moved with a military-style gait, and on his back was a specific weathered Ozark Trail pack. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a hit. In the sections to come, we are going to look at the chilling ransom note that bypassed the family entirely and went straight to the press. And we will talk about the man who tried to use this tragedy to pull off a $6 million cryptocurrency scam. This is the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. The world is watching, the FBI is hunting, and the heart of the desert is holding its breath. To understand why this abduction sent shockwaves through the United States Department of Justice, you have to understand who Nancy Guthrie is. In the high-stakes world of national news, where her daughter Savannah is a household name, Nancy was the anchor's anchor. At 84 years old, she lived a life that was both quiet and deeply rooted in the Tucson community. She was a retired teacher, a woman who spent decades shaping the minds of children in public schools. She was not a woman of international intrigue. She was a grandmother who liked her routine, her Sunday Mass, and her evening phone calls with her children. But to a predator, Nancy Guthrie wasn't just a retired teacher, she was a high-value target. The Catalina Foothills is one of the most scenic districts in Arizona. The homes there are built into the rugged terrain, offering privacy and breathtaking views of the city lights below. It is a place where people go to disappear into a peaceful retirement. However, that very privacy, the long, winding driveways and the dense desert vegetation, creates a blind spot that a sophisticated kidnapper can exploit. When the Pima County Sheriff's Department first began their canvass of the neighborhood, they noticed something disturbing. Nancy's home sat on a slight elevation. It had a clear line of sight to the main road, but it was shielded from her nearest neighbors by a stand of mature saguaro cacti and palo verde trees. The kidnapper didn't just stumble upon this house. They had performed what the FBI calls pre-attack surveillance. They knew her schedule. They knew she lived alone. And most importantly, they knew she was vulnerable. At 84, Nancy's health is a delicate balance. She is a survivor of several medical challenges, but her most critical lifeline is a fitted Medtronic pacemaker. This device, implanted in her chest, ensures her heart maintains a steady rhythm. Without it, or if the device were to malfunction due to physical trauma or extreme stress, Nancy would face a life-threatening cardiac event within minutes. When the investigators realized the pacemaker was part of the equation, the nature of the search changed. This wasn't just a search for a missing person, it was a medical rescue mission. Every hour that Nancy remained in captivity, the risk of her battery or her heart failing increased exponentially. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Analysis Unit began looking at the why. Why target an 84-year-old woman for a kidnapping? In the United States, kidnappings for ransom are statistically rare compared to other violent crimes, and they are even rarer when the victim is elderly. Usually, these crimes target people with immediate access to liquid assets. Nancy lived a comfortable life, but she didn't have millions of dollars sitting in a home safe. The value was in her name, or rather, her daughter's name. By targeting the mother of a major news anchor, the kidnapper wasn't just taking a person, they were taking a seat at the table of the American media landscape. They knew that Savannah Guthrie has over 1 million followers on social media. They knew that the Today Show reaches millions of viewers every single morning. They were weaponizing the love of a family to create a national crisis. We are about to get into the specific evidence found on the neighbor's security fence, the image that changed everything. If you are finding this breakdown helpful, please give this video a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this story to more people, and in a kidnapping case, more eyes can lead to a breakthrough. What time is it there as you're seeing this? The first 48 hours are the most critical in any abduction, and we are well past that mark now. Every minute counts. While the forensic teams were literal inches from the ground on Nancy's porch, a breakthrough came from a house 3 doors down. A neighbor, an avid outdoorsman, had installed high-end trail cameras along his perimeter fence to catch images of mountain lions and javelinas that frequently wander into the residential areas. On the morning of February 1st, at approximately 2:37 a.m., one of those cameras triggered. It didn't catch a mountain lion. It caught a low-light image of a figure moving through the brush. The figure was wearing a heavy, dark-colored jacket despite the relatively mild Tucson night. They were wearing tactical gloves and a full face covering. But the signature piece of evidence was the backpack. The FBI identified it as an Ozark Trail 25-liter high-capacity hiker pack. For those of you who don't know, Ozark Trail is a brand sold almost exclusively at Walmart. While it is a common brand, this specific model featured a unique modification. A strip of reflective silver tape had been placed over the brand logo on the back. This tells investigators two things. First, the kidnapper wanted to avoid being easily identified by a brand name. Second, they were prepared for the dark, but why carry a heavy pack? If you are snatching an elderly woman from her bed, you want to move fast, you want to be light. A 25-liter pack suggests that the kidnapper was carrying tools of the trade, restraints, medical supplies to keep Nancy alive, perhaps even a signal jammer to prevent her from using a cellular device or a medical alert necklace. As the sun began to set on the first day of the investigation, the Guthrie family released their first public statement. Savannah, standing alongside her sister Annie and her brother Cameron, spoke directly to the camera. Her voice was steady, but her eyes told a story of pure terror. She didn't talk about the investigation. She didn't talk about the police. She talked to the person who had her mother. "She needs her medicine," Savannah said. "She is a mother, a grandmother, and a friend. Whatever you want, we will talk. Just let her go." But the kidnapper wasn't talking to the family. Not yet. They were waiting for the media frenzy to reach a fever pitch. They were waiting for the proof of life to become the most valuable commodity in the world. In the next section, we are going to dive into the digital crime scene. We will look at how a team of elite cyber detectives at the FBI managed to ping a device that shouldn't have been trackable, and we will reveal the shocking discovery made in the desert scrub just 5 miles from Nancy's home. The Ozark Trail suspect thought they had covered their tracks. They thought that by disconnecting the Google Nest, they had vanished into the night. But in 2026, everyone leaves a digital footprint, even if they don't know they're stepping in the mud of the internet. In the world of modern criminal investigation, there is no such thing as a clean getaway. We live in an era of invisible threads, data packets, signal pings, and digital handshakes that occur thousands of times a second. The person who entered Nancy Guthrie's home at 2:12 a.m. was clearly aware of the physical hardware of security. They knew how to reach up and sever the connection to the Google Nest doorbell. They likely thought that by doing so, they had deleted themselves from history. But they forgot one thing. The cloud doesn't sleep, and it doesn't forget. When the FBI's Operational Technology Division arrived at the scene, they didn't just look at the broken plastic of the camera, they went to the source. Even though the live feed was cut at 1:47 a.m., the system's heartbeat continued to log metadata. Every smart device in that home, the thermostat, the refrigerator, even the smart light bulbs in the hallway, was part of a localized network. The investigators discovered that at 2:14 a.m., the hallway light triggered. It wasn't turned on by a switch. It was triggered by a motion link setting. This gave the FBI a precise map of the movement inside the house. The intruder moved from the front door directly to the master bedroom. There was no wandering. There was no searching. This confirmed the theory of pre-attack surveillance. The kidnapper knew exactly where Nancy slept. But the most haunting piece of digital evidence came from Nancy's own wrist. Nancy Guthrie wore an Apple Watch. It was a gift from her children, primarily used for its fall detection feature and to track her heart rate in conjunction with her pacemaker. At 2:18 a.m., the watch recorded a massive spike in Nancy's heart rate, climbing from a resting 65 beats per minute to over 130 in less than 10 seconds. That is the biological signature of terror. Then at 2:21 a.m., the watch's GPS registered a rapid movement. Nancy was no longer in her bedroom. She was moving through the living room and out the front door at a pace that an 84-year-old woman could not achieve on her own. She was being carried. The watch continued to transmit for exactly 4 minutes as it moved down the driveway and onto North Campbell Avenue. Then at 2:25 a.m., the signal vanished. It wasn't just turned off. The FBI believes a high-powered signal jammer, a device that is illegal to own or operate in the United States, was activated. And this detail changed the profile of the suspect instantly. This wasn't a desperate local criminal or a drug addict looking for a quick score. Using a signal jammer requires technical knowledge and a level of cold-blooded planning that points toward a professional. This investigation is moving into some very dark territory. We are looking at a level of sophistication that is rarely seen in domestic abductions. If you find this deep dive into the forensic side of the case compelling, make sure to share this video. The more people who understand these tactics, the harder it is for these predators to hide. What's the weather like in your city today? It is a somber, overcast day here as we process these details. The Arizona sun feels very far away when you're looking at heart rate logs of an 84-year-old in distress. While the cyber detectives were tracing the Apple Watch, a ground team in the Pima County desert made a discovery that sent a chill through the entire task force. Approximately 5 miles north of Nancy's home, in a rugged wash near Ventana Canyon, a patrol officer spotted a glint of metal in the sand. It was Nancy's Apple Watch. It hadn't been destroyed. It had been neatly placed on a flat rock along with her medical alert necklace. This was a message. By leaving these items in a place where they would eventually be found, the kidnapper was telling the FBI, "I know how you track people. I am one step ahead of you, and I have stripped her of her lifelines." The discovery of the medical alert necklace was particularly devastating for the Guthrie family. Without that button, and Nancy had no way to call for help if her captor left her alone, and without the watch, the FBI lost their eyes on her physical condition. However, the kidnapper made one critical mistake. When the FBI laboratory in Quantico analyzed the Apple Watch, they didn't just look for fingerprints, they looked at the internal accelerometer data. Even after the signal was jammed, the watch continued to record the physics of its environment. By analyzing the vibrations and the G-force recorded between 2:21 and 2:25 a.m., forensic engineers were able to determine the exact make and model of the vehicle Nancy was placed in. The vibrations match the engine frequency and suspension bounce of a 2023 Ford F-150 Lightning, an electric truck. This was a massive breakthrough, because the truck is electric, and it moves almost silently. This explains why none of the neighbors heard a car pull away in the middle of the night. But electric vehicles also have their own digital ghosts. They rely on charging networks, and they are constantly communicating with satellites for navigation. The search shifted from "where is Nancy" to "where is that truck?" But just as the FBI was closing in on a list of registered owners in the Tucson district, a new player entered the game. A series of encrypted emails began hitting the inboxes of major news outlets like CNN, NBC, and the Arizona Daily Star. The emails didn't contain a video of Nancy. They contained a single image of the Ozark Trail backpack sitting on a kitchen table next to a copy of that morning's newspaper. On the subject line was a string of 32 alphanumeric characters, a Bitcoin wallet address. The demand was simple: $6 million in cryptocurrency. The ransom note was written in a cold, detached tone. It didn't make threats. It simply stated that Nancy's health was a variable that the family could control by paying the fee. It was a psychological masterclass in extortion. By framing it as a variable, the kidnapper was reminding Savannah Guthrie that every hour she spent negotiating was an hour her mother's heart was under lethal stress. But as the FBI began to trace the origin of these emails, they realized they weren't dealing with one criminal, and they were dealing with a digital swarm. The news of the abduction had trended so fast on social media that it had attracted predatory interferers, people who had nothing to do with the crime but were trying to insert themselves into the narrative to steal the ransom money. One of these men was Derek Colella. In our next section, we are going to look at the vulture factor. We will see how a man in California almost derailed the entire investigation by pretending to be the kidnapper and how the FBI had to hunt the hunters while Nancy's life hung in the balance. The complexity of this case is a reminder of why the status active/trending tag is so dangerous. When a crime becomes a viral event, the truth gets buried under a mountain of digital noise. But for the Pima County Sheriff and the FBI, there is only one truth that matters. An 84-year-old woman is in the dark and her heart is counting down. In the immediate aftermath of a high-profile disappearance, the digital world often becomes a secondary crime scene. When the victim is the mother of a woman who delivers the news to millions of Americans every morning, that digital space doesn't just buzz, it screams. But while the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department were hunting for a masked